come to the college and continue the education.
The court has held fundamentally that it's not an essential religious practice at all. So the question of public order.
Students are likely to move the Supreme Court now. How is the government prepared? Are you also preparing to contest that in the Supreme Court if it's appealed?
Most certainly. We have raised substantial contentions before the High Court. Yes. If and when the matter is moved before the Supreme Court, we shall answer this.
Any likely to move a caveat or anything in Supreme Court?
We'll have to decide in consultation with the government what is to be done. Thank you.
But you're happy with the verdict today, sir, because it was the longest of the longest hearings that...
Because apart whether it is for the state or against the state, it settles an important question of law raised and also the unseemingly avoidable controversy. I'll say that.
We got the judgment but not the justice. So this was really unexpected, and we do not welcome this decision, the verdict, and we still have a lot of ways to go, the legal ways to go. We might go to the Supreme Court to get our justice, and also when considering the verdict, they haven't considered our constitutional, our fundamental constitution rights. They have interpreted the Quran and the Hadith, but the scholars, Islamic scholars, are supposed to interpret our Quran and Hadith.
Now we are looking at just hours after the landmark Karnataka High Court judgment. Government college students in Karnataka's Yadgir city have, they've boycotted classes and examinations, protesting against this verdict. Let's have a listen what they had to say.
ಹಿಜಾಬ್ ತೆಗೆದು ಬರಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಹೆಂಗ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ?
ಇಲ್ಲ ತೆಗೆಲ್ಲ ಹಿಜಾಬ್
ಬರಿತ್ರಿಲ್ಲ ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ ಅದು ಹಿಜಾಬ್ ತೆಗೆದು ಬರಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಬರಿತ್ರಿ ಇಲ್ಲ
ಹಿಜಾಬ್ ಹಾಕೊಂಡೆ ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ ಬರಿತೀವಿ ಹಿಜಾಬ್ ತೆಗೆದಾರ ಬರಲ್ಲ ನಾವು ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್
ಬರಲ್ಲ ಏನೇ ಈಗ ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ ಬರಲ್ಲ ನೀವು
ಬರಿತೀವಿ
ಹಿಜಾಬ್ ಹಾಕೊಂಡು
ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ ಬರಿತೀವಿ
ಹಿಜಾಬ್ ಬೇಡ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಬರಲ್ಲ
ಬರಲ್ಲ
ಬುರ್ಕಾ ಹಿಜಾಬ್ ನಾವು ಈ ಕೋರ್ಟ್ ಆದೇಶದ ಮೇರೆಗೆ ಹೆಂಗದ ಹಂಗೆ ಪಾಲಿಸ್ರಿ ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಹಂಗಾಗಿ ಇಲ್ಲ ನಾವು ಎಷ್ಟು ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಕನ್ವಿನ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು ಇಲ್ಲ ನಾವು ಹಾಕೊಂಡೇ ಬರ್ತೀವಿ ಅನ್ನೋ ಉದ್ದೇಶಕ್ಕೆ ಅವರು ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಹೋಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ.
ಅಂದರೆ ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆ 10:30 ಕೋರ್ಟ್ ಕೂಡ ತೀರ್ಪು ನೀಡಿದೆ.
ಅದು ಕೋರ್ಟ್ ಕೊಡೋ ತೀರ್ಪಿನಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಮುಂಚೆನೇ ಅವ್ರು ಬಂದಿದ್ರು, ಎಕ್ಸಾಮಿಗೆ ಬರೋದೆಲ್ಲ ಬಂದರು. ಬಂದಾಗ ಅವರು ತೆಗೆದು ಕುತ್ಕೋಬೇಕು ಅಂದಾಗ ಅವ್ರು ತೆಗಿಯಲ್ಲ ಅಂತಂದರು. ಅದು ಕೋರ್ಟ್ ಆದೇಶ ಬರ್ತದೆ ಬರೋರ್ಗೂ ವೆಯ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂದರು. ಬಂದ್ರೂ ಅವರು ಇಲ್ಲ ನಾವು ಹೋಗ್ತೀವಿ, ಹಿಜಾಬ್ ಹಾಕ್ಕೊಂಡೇ ಕೊಡ್ತೀವಿ, ಬುರ್ಕ ಹಾಕ್ಕೊಂಡೇ ಕೊಡ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂತ ಅಂದ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋದರು.
ಎಷ್ಟು ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿ ಹೋಗಿದ್ರು?
11 ಜನ. ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಮುಂಚೆನೇ ಒಂದು 4 ಜನ ಹೋಗಿದ್ರು. ಒಟ್ಟು 35 ಜನ ಏನೋ ಇದ್ದಂಗಿದ್ರೆ. ಕೆಲವು ಜನ ಕೂತಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಹಿಜಾಬು ಬುರ್ಕ ತೆಗೆದು ಕೂತಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಯೂನಿಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಹಾಕ್ಕೊಂಡೆ ಕೂತಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಕೆಲವು ಜನ ತೆಗಿದೇನೆ ನಾವು ಇಲ್ಲ ಹೋಗ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂತ ಹೋಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ.
ಡಿಪಾರ್ಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ ಸೈನ್ಸ್ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಹೋಗ್ಯಾರ?
ಇಲ್ಲ, ಎಲ್ಲ ಡಿಪಾರ್ಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್, ಕಾಮರ್ಸ್, ಸೈನ್ಸ್, 3 ಫ್ಯಾಕಲ್ಟಿ.
All right, India Today's correspondent speaking to Asaduddin Owaisi, where he condemns the High Court's verdict. He calls this disappointing. Here's what he said.
असादुद्दीन ओवैसी साहब इस वक्त हमारे साथ बातचीत करेंगे. सर, इस्लाम से रिलेटेड नहीं है हिजाब, ये कह दिया गया है. आज कर्नाटक हाई कोर्ट का वर्डिक्ट है, पहली प्रतिक्रिया?
नहीं, हमने जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट का जो ऑर्डर आया था, जजमेंट तो अभी हमने पढ़ा नहीं, पढ़ना पड़ेगा, मगर जो ऑर्डर के ऊपर हमने अपना जो रिएक्शन ट्विटर पर दिया ये है कि हम इस जजमेंट से डिसएग्री करते हैं और डिसएग्री करने का हमको पूरा इख्तियार है, इसलिए कि ये जो ऑर्डर है वो फंडामेंटल राइट टू फ्रीडम ऑफ रिलीजन, कल्चर, फ्रीडम ऑफ स्पीच एंड एक्सप्रेशन को वो सस्पेंड करता है. जबकि संविधान में अगर आप देखेंगे प्रियम्बल में ये बात लिखी गई लिबर्टी ऑफ थॉट, एक्सप्रेशन ऑफ बिलीफ, फेथ एंड वर्शिप है. तो अगर मेरा ये बिलीफ है कि मैं सर पे हिजाब पहनूंगी तो वो तो मेरा इख्तियार है. और तीसरी बात ये है कि हम ये चाहेंगे कि ये पूरा एसेंशियल रिलीजियस प्रैक्टिस का जो टेस्ट है ये कोर्ट्स ऑफ लॉ है, कोर्ट ऑफ रिलीजन तो नहीं है. आप क्यों उसको देखें एसेंशियल कौन है तो है या नहीं है.
जैसे सिखिज्म में टर्बन को यानी कि पगड़ी को, किरपान को एसेंशियल माना गया, हिजाब को नहीं माना गया.
नहीं, सुनिए, हम यही तो कह रहे हैं कि एसेंशियलिटी का जो टेस्ट है वो कोर्ट कैसे तय करेगा. तो इसीलिए इसको अपील करने की जरूरत है और सुप्रीम कोर्ट में वहाँ ऑलरेडी सुप्रीम कोर्ट साबरीमाला के केस को सुन रही है कि वो प्रैक्टिस एसेंशियल है या नहीं है. और हेड स्कार्फ को आप बैन करने का मतलब ये है कि वो उन मुस्लिम लड़कियों को, उनके बिलीफ को हर्ट करता है. और ये कहा जा रहा है कि आप या तो अपने रिलीजन पर चलिए या एजुकेशन को छोड़ दीजिए. हमारा मानना ये है कि एजुकेशन जारी रहेगा हमारे बिलीफ के साथ, और हिजाब पहनने से देखिए सरकार इंटरवीन कब कर सकती है, जब मेरा एक्शन जो है वो किसी को हर्ट कर रहा है, हार्म कर रहा है, तो किसी को हार्म नहीं हो रहा है, और यूनिफॉर्मिटी लाएगा। ये
कहने की
तो ये बताइए, यूनिफॉर्म अगर आप कोई पहन भी लेगा तो क्या उसका रिलीजन नहीं मालूम होगा? कोई अगर यूनिफॉर्म पहनेगा तो नहीं मालूम होगा कि कौन एक रिच माँ बाप का बेटा है, कौन गरीब माँ बाप की बेटी है? क्या यूनिफॉर्म पहनने से नहीं मालूम होगा कि किसकी कास्ट क्या है, किसका बिलीफ क्या है? तो ये बात में दम नहीं है। देखिए, आयरलैंड सरकार ने जब पुलिस यूनिफॉर्म में हिजाब और सिख टर्बन की जाती, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया ने उसको एक्सेप्ट किया, वेलकम किया, तो वहां पर क्यों एक्सेप्ट नहीं कर रहे? तो ये आखिरी बात, बीजेपी ने इसको शुरू किया, ये सब गड़बड़ बीजेपी ने शुरू की, अब मामला कोर्ट को गया है, कोर्ट से ऑर्डर आ गया। ये
अब सुप्रीम कोर्ट को अपील करेंगे? ऑल इंडिया मुस्लिम पर्सनल लॉ बोर्ड भी अपील करने की बात कर रही है इस मामले में।
हाँ, करेंगी। मुझे नहीं मालूम ऑल इंडिया मुस्लिम पर्सनल बोर्ड क्या करेगा, मगर मेरा मानना ये है कि ये जजमेंट आर्टिकल 15 के भी खिलाफ है, जो डिस्क्रिमिनेशन को प्रोहिबिट करता, तो इसीलिए हम ये करते हैं कि ये और अपील होगी सुप्रीम कोर्ट में, इन पिटिशनर्स को अपील करना है। हमारे MIM पार्टी के भी एक लीडर कर्नाटका के अपील उसमें पिटिशनर थे, वो भी हम उनसे बात करेंगे, अपील करें, और इसका एक फार रीचिंग इम्पैक्ट होगा। आप देखेंगे, आप हर जगह पर तंग करना शुरू कर देंगे, हर जगह पे लड़कियों को तंग करना शुरू करेंगे। अरे भाई, तालीम हासिल कर रहे हैं, वहां तंग करेंगे आप लोग, देखिए। अब तो ये है, अब तक इनिशियल रिएक्शन मेरा यही है।
महबूबा मुफ्ती भी कह रही हैं कि एक जगह आप महिला सशक्तिकरण की बात करती हैं, दूसरी जगह उनको चूज करने भी नहीं दे रहे हैं, उनका राइट टू हिजाब या राइट टू फ्रीडम के अंडर ये जो पूरी बात है वो आ रही है।
नहीं, मेरा रिएक्शन मैं आपको दिया हूँ, मेरा बोलना ये है आपको जो मैं दिया हूँ।
ठीक है, असादुद्दीन ओवैसी साहब कह रहे हैं कि बाकायदा इसको किसी तरीके से अपील करने की कोशिश करेंगे सुप्रीम कोर्ट में, और ये भी कह रहे हैं कि आने वाले समय में इसमें बड़े रैमिफिकेशंस हो सकते हैं क्योंकि काफी संवेदनशील ये मामला है। लेकिन बिल्कुल असहमति जताते हुए कर्नाटक हाईकोर्ट के इस वर्डिक्ट से असादुद्दीन ओवैसी साहब ने कहा है कि जरूर इस पे अपील की जाएगी। हिजाब को लेकर बहुत बड़ा मामला ये है, और आगे जाके देखना होगा कि किस तरीके से सुप्रीम कोर्ट के दरवाजे इस मामले में भी खटखटाए जा सकते हैं। अभिषेक सिंह के साथ नई दिल्ली से मैं मिलन शर्मा, आज तक।
All right, there we saw Asaduddin Owaisi, who speaks on hijab and the verdict that's come by the Karnataka High Court. Not very happy and pleased, calling this a violation of constitutional rights and urging those counsel and petitioners to approach the Supreme Court. Now, this was expected. We see that several opposition leaders now calling this as an unfavorable verdict by the High Court. In fact, many of them calling this a violation of fundamental rights, of constitutional rights. These are pro-hijab voices, of course, that I'm bringing to you. But in the meanwhile, I'm going to cut across to Seher Faraz, who's a Bengalurian. She's an entrepreneur herself, has been very keenly observing the developments on the hijab issue. In fact, I'd like to definitely say and remind our viewers that Seher was one girl who used to wear the hijab briefly and then took it off and then wears it if she wants to. She calls it her personal choice and wants to do it when she wants to do it. Seher, you've spoken in the past as well, and now the High Court verdict is out. Based on the verdict, it says that hijab is not an essential religious practice. Therefore, don't fight it. Just follow the guidelines the institutions have set. Uniformity is mandatory. You cannot refuse it.
Yes. I won't say I was surprised when this came out because, like I mentioned earlier, just the fact that this has become a point of discussion at this level, I thought was quite bizarre. The fact that a woman in India cannot cover herself for her personal choice, I thought itself is not the right way to go. But yes, so firstly, let's clarify, is hijab mandatory in Islam or not? So my view on this would be yes, it is mandatory. It is definitely mandatory, and it is recognized internationally in many, many uniforms, that it be airlines, that it be anywhere, passport office, you can take a picture with your hijab. So for the court all of a sudden to say that it is not an obligatory act or a command in Islam, I don't know what their criteria is or where they looked at when giving out this verdict. So that would be one. The second thing would be whether or not it is a religious command or not. Just the fact that the government is asking a woman to uncover herself, okay? That itself does not make sense. And like many other people who came on here said, you're literally telling a woman either you choose to follow your religion or you choose education, which I don't think is the practice of our country. India is known for the love and the diversity that we spread all around. And just bringing these issues up, especially in the middle of exams, when things are so crucial for so many students, to bring this up and make this the point of discussion, I think is completely bizarre. This could have been handled later if it really needed to, which I don't think it needed to, but if it had to, they could have even waited for the exams to finish. But the timing is so crucial, and it's unnecessary right now to, put students through so much stress.
Seher, many of the students, even today, in fact, today itself in Yadgir district of Karnataka, almost 30 students refused to write their preliminary examinations. They returned home because now they feel torn apart between, on one side, families insisting that the girls wear the hijab and go to schools, and on the other, the institution saying that you're not allowed inside classrooms. So it's the girls eventually bearing the brunt. But what would you say to those parents who are... What would you say to those parents who are enforcing hijab? Many of those girls are not able to take off the hijab because their parents insist they can't.
See, so now when it comes to Islam, okay, in general, right, Islam commands you to do something, but it also says do not force in religion. Let the front person come to religion on his own or on her own, right? And you have to understand there are many students that religion is a very big part of their lives, right? It's basically asking them to live how they want to or choose education. So in this case, I would say that, let the exams finish. Even to all the schools, let the exams finish. Give people time to process what is going on, right? And if they want to go to Supreme Court, they're free to do so. But don't do it at such a crucial time where basically you're putting the entire year of a student to stake.
Seher, stay with us. Speaking of students and the student community, Dhruv Jatti comes from the Bangalore student community. He's been rallying for student rights in the city of Bengaluru. Dhruv, this verdict now comes as a setback to all those students who want to wear hijab inside classrooms. We saw the kind of repercussions post the interim verdict itself, where large-scale institutions issued a blanket ban. Many of those even that were allowing for hijab now aren't. But this is a High Court's verdict that needs to be followed. Uniformity needs to be maintained, and there is no debate furthermore, of course, unless the Supreme Court intervenes. How would you look at this?
So what we need to understand is that the court verdict that's come out is very new to a traditional society that was following the whole pattern of wearing a hijab and going to classes. So it's a matter of time as to how students are going to adapt to this change. Like we saw in Yadgir, students were not ready to adapt. We're going to have to face those challenges as well. This is where government intervention is very important. As the order was passed, there has to be some sort of counseling given to students, whether on how they should go about it, because this is a very, very sort of volatile situation. Looking at how the timing is, with exams right into the picture, final exams for many degree students as well. So it's a matter of losing your degree by the end of it. So it's a very, very feeble situation, and government intervention is very important. Counseling is what is recommended at this point of time. Whether or not it goes to the Supreme Court or what happens to the Supreme Court is secondary. But the immediate ramifications is what we should be tackling at this point of time.
And what are the immediate ramifications that you are foreseeing? What we saw today is one classic example. In Yadgir, students refused to write the exams. They walked away home. In fact, those girls say that we want to consult with our families and our parents and then decide whether we want to take off the hijab and come in. Traditionally, several Muslim families in the country, in India, are still very, very conservative. They're very adamant on wearing the hijab. This is a conversation and a debate that we should ideally have outside educational institutions, but unfortunately, it's reduced to these students bearing the brunt at the end of it. So the ramifications we saw already unfolding today as a classic example. Do you see this happening more in the days to come?
Yeah, I think it's surely going to affect the whole part of how the traditional system is being blocked. So this is where we have to sort of come up with some level of intervention. NGOs, families, societies, government all put together have to come back and bring in the peace within society, promote education amongst Muslim women at this point of time, because that's what's at stake.
All right, stay with us. I'm going to cut across to Seher. Seher, Dhruv, who's integral part of the student community in Bangalore, says, promote education. Do you think this should also resonate among Muslim families altogether, that, let's for a moment keep religion aside, let's push for girls to be educated? Currently, we have Muslim families who are very conservative in many rural areas, even urban areas for that matter. Parents not very comfortable allowing their girls to go to colleges or schools wearing the hijab. Now, what kind of conditioning do they really need? And is it necessary at this point?
See, I personally feel like put religion aside for a while is hard. Because for some people, religion is what they live for, right? For them, it is the afterlife that matters or whatever. So they live for their religion. So to tell a person, okay, you put religion aside and you pursue your education is very difficult. For them, it's not different, right? They're living a life based on what their beliefs are. So you cannot tell them, leave your beliefs aside and you come ahead and you educate yourself. And I completely agree with Dhruv when he says, we have to tackle the situation right now. You are putting the degrees of many girls at stake, which they have spent many, many years to do, right? To achieve. So why now? Why in the middle of exams, right? And to tell parents or any, woman right now, okay, you know what, forget it, just don't wear it and just go. It's basically asking her to leave her identity behind. See, everyone has a different level at which they, can be pushed. Tomorrow, like I had mentioned previously, if someone tells you, okay, you know what, security reasons, don't wear a top and go to school tomorrow. Would you do that? Okay, it's fine. As long as I get my education, I will go to school topless. Will you do that? No, you will not. So similarly, for certain women, a hijab is that essential or that obligatory for them. So to tell them, okay, remove your scarf and go and study, it's not something many people would be up to. And I don't think that's something we can even
No, but the Karnataka government, Seher, and their views is that in classroom, all of them should maintain uniformity, which means that nobody should be distinguished between religions. If you're in a classroom, as a person viewing the class, should not know which person comes from what religious background, because this is good conditioning for students in school level, because then they will learn to accept and unite as citizens and leave any religious discrimination aside. This is the Karnataka government's view when they define uniformity. Go on.
So I personally feel like we don't need to train students to not know who the front person is or which religions they come from. We need to train students to tolerate and accept other religions, right? It's not about being robots in a class. It's about being a part of a community that is diverse. Why would you not want the front person to know that this person is a Muslim or this person is a Christian or this person is a Hindu? Why? That's not the point. That's not what India is known for. India is known for their diversity. It's known for their tolerance. It's known for the acceptance. You should be able to sit in a classroom beside someone who is not of the same faith as you and not be biased and not be discriminatory. But by doing stuff like this, whether it be inside a school or whether it be walking on a street, you are instigating bias. You are instigating people to be discriminatory against other religions, which I feel is completely not what India is all about. India is about peace, it's about love, it's about spreading love, it's about accepting diversity. And by doing stuff like this, I feel like you're taking away the identity of what India is. India is known for these stuff. And this acts like this is what is taking India away from the characteristics.
Seher, that's certainly views that resonate in the country in many sections of the society, but you have a larger section that says, why do you want to wear religion in your sleeve when it comes to educational institutions? Just leave it out for a moment. Inside classroom, let's focus on education. Do you believe that hijab interferes in education in any way?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Like when we put out rules or laws or regulations, there needs to be a reasoning behind it. Like somebody else had mentioned previously. Is it harming society? Is it coming between her pen and her paper? What is going on? Is it not? Is it restraining her from hearing the professor? Why? When the internationally hijab is known as a compulsory part of the Islamic religion and it is accepted in so many uniforms, why do you feel like it is restricting a student from learning, right? Is it harmful? What's going on? There needs to be a reasoning. When a verdict is given by court, they need to tell us why. Why is it harmful? Or why did you wake up after so many years and all of a sudden decide that no, this is not acceptable in the school, right? There needs to be a reason.
Seher, we've heard you loud and clear, and thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much, Dhruv, for joining us. Let's hope there's peace and harmony maintained, at least until a proper solution is brought about to this debate. Let's hope calm prevails in the state of Karnataka. Thank you very much. All right, yeah, we're shifting our focus to Ukraine, the war-torn country. It's now 20 days on of Russian assault on Ukraine. This continues. It is the capital city of Kiev where we see Russian forces encircling the capital city. Kiev that's now come under attack. Russia has stepped up its offensive on Kiev. India Today is the only channel reporting from ground zero, that war-torn zone. India Today's contributor Rajesh Pawar is currently in Kiev, capturing the full extent of the Russian attack and its destruction. Today, a residential block inside Kiev was bombed. Huge plumes of smoke were seen coming out of this building. This is Kiev, the capital city that so long had peace, at least for the last 8 days. It now seems to have attacks have started in that capital city. We see residential buildings now coming under target of Russian forces. This residential block in Kiev has been bombed.
This is Shivatonsky district here in Kiev. This is Shivatonsky district here in Kiev. A residential block has just been hit. Smoke emanating from everywhere. Fire tenders are working to... This is a building behind me which has been bombed just a few minutes back, and fire tenders are everywhere trying to douse the fire. It's a residential block inside the Kiev city which has been hit just now.
All right, let me quickly cut across to Rajesh Pawar, who's contributing to India Today's factual reportage. Rajesh, we see that a bomb has blasted one of those residential blocks in Kiev. You and your report suggested over the last 8 days, Kiev did not see any kind of shelling or attack. But now, as this war enters day 20, we see large-scale destruction that has already started off from that residential building. A residential building block has been bombarded. Do show us what's behind you.
See, there was a bomb blast. There were 2 blasts yesterday as well. You can see fire there. This tender has been working for last 2 hours, but still a lot of apartment blocks are still burning. If you can see the fire there. And this is a fire tender working here, but still there is fire. It's been burning for last 2.5 hours since it was struck by a missile in the morning today at 4:30 to 5 local time.
Right. Rajesh, what's the situation there? Have civilians fled from those areas? Residential buildings have now become targets. Russia has been claiming constantly that civilians are not their target. But yet we see residential buildings being constantly attacked in several parts of Ukraine. This one, right in the capital city of Kiev, a residential block has been bombed.
You are absolutely right. Yesterday I had reported from Oblon, an area right in the heart of the city, which was with the residential block was bombed. And today here, this building in the Kashmir district, again, a residential block, the complete building has been destroyed. And there was another blast, which I saw just before this. It was in the middle of a road. Nearby buildings were damaged, but it fell on a broad road, so not much casualties. But here, I believe, few people have died, a lot of them were injured. But that's the situation here right now.
Right. Rajesh, we want to get an understanding as to how far are the Russian forces from Kiev. We know that they've encircled Kiev on day 20 of this war. Russian forces have managed to align all around the capital city of Kiev. They've encircled their target number 1.
Yes, Russian forces are still a little far away. I mean, the nearest advance which they have made towards Kiev, they are still about 12 to 13 kilometers away. But now the whole Kiev city is within the artillery range of the medium artillery and the multi-barrel rocket launchers, which Russian forces have. The entire city is within their range now. They can fire at will anywhere on any building in Kiev city. Over to you.
Right. What are the casualties, Rajesh? If you can give us an understanding on the number of people who have injured and who have been killed in this bombing on a residential building. And where is this residential building located? Is it right in the center of the city? Were there people there at that time of this bombing?
See, this is not in the center of the city. It is like about 10 kilometers away from the city center. But it is quite close to Irpin where the fighting was taking place, and maybe just about 10 kilometers from the front lines and 10 kilometers from the center. You can take it that way. And this is Akademia district. It's difficult for me to pronounce it right now, but Akademia district, which is named the place where it is. And it's a fully residential area, only residential buildings in this whole area, no military establishment, no establishment of any strategic importance or any communication center. And this bomb has hit a totally, completely residential sector inside the Kiev city today morning around 4:30 to 5 local time.
You know, Rajesh, this comes even as Russia has been constantly claiming, and you've said that as well, that their target is not civilian establishments, that they do not want to target civilians. And of course, Ukraine has been falsely claiming that civilians are under attack. But today's bombing on a residential building in Kiev really speaks of a different story.
I agree with you. I mean, they have constantly claimed that they are not doing it. They're not targeting any kind of residential complexes. They're not targeting civilians. And yesterday we saw in Oblon, entire apartment block blown away and burning. And same story now today in the morning. And when I was recording it, there were two blasts again went off very close. They might be in the city or they might be between Irpin and Kiev. But huge two blasts were heard when I was recording this story for India Today. Over to you.
Rajesh, if you can give us some understanding on the talks between the two countries. Just yesterday, we know that there was some headway in the talks. 10 humanitarian corridors were agreed upon for evacuation to take place. Today, what's the development on that front? Any word of progress?
See, both the countries have agreed to talk on a daily basis through virtual meetings. So they have both agreed that they will continue to talk regularly on a daily basis through these virtual meetings till the time they meet face to face for the next round of talks. But till then, there will be meetings every day to coordinate humanitarian corridors and to try to make some kind of progress in these talks. So this is the information confirmed from both the governments, that every day virtual meetings will be taking place between the representatives of Ukraine and Russia. Over to you.
Right, Rajesh, we know that this is very risky for you to show us what's around. We know that the military there has been keeping a hawk eye on anyone taking videos and capturing what's happening there. But is there a possibility that you can show us one more time what's behind you? We really want to see the scale of devastation that Kiev has witnessed.
See, here it's not a problem. Whenever there's a registered block hit or something like this, they allow the press. And it's not only me alone. There are 5 to 6 press people from 5 to 6 different countries. And they are allowing it. It's not a problem here now to show it around. Look, there's still fire burning, despite of fire tender working so hard for last 3 hours now. It's still burning. It is still burning.
Is that building, and were there people at that time, Rajesh?
Most of the building was unoccupied, but there were few people inside. I tried to interview a person. He doesn't speak English at all. But he told me that he was inside the building. He was on the second floor when this thing hit. And I think the impact was in the middle of the building. So he is safe. He did not get injured and he ran away. But not many people were living in the building when this thing hit the building. The building was almost virtually unoccupied.
All right. From what we see, that building is entirely charred. How many hours ago that this blast took place, Rajesh?
This thing happened somewhere between 4:30 and 5 in the morning, local time. As I reported in the morning, I got up in the morning. I woke up because I heard this very loud blast very close to me. And that was 4:30 to 5 in the morning. And these fire tenders have been working for last 3 hours now, trying to douse the fire, which is this missile has put this building on.
Right. You know, Rajesh, I want to know what was the intention while this building was bombed? Do you believe that this was a deliberate target? This residential building was a deliberate target of the Russian forces?
Look, I will not say that it would be probably deliberate. It would be deliberate only in case they had substantial information that some kind of militia or maybe military personnel are using this building. They are housed inside this building. That would be a deliberate reason to hit it. Otherwise, it could be a mistake. It could be like technologies, despite of being so sophisticated today, there can be an error of few meters here and there, or maybe even bigger. So it could be by mistake that, or maybe because of lack of precision in the ammunition which was hitting it, or it could be deliberate if they had information that probably militia or foreign fighters or maybe the army people are housed inside this apartment block. Over to you.
Right, Rajesh, what's around that residential building? Are there more residential houses and buildings in that vicinity?
I'll show you around. I'll show you around the building.
Please.
So this is where the building is. Now I can get the water on my because of this fire tender. So this is the area around. If you see, this is the area around.
Yeah, it's doesn't seem as a populated area. One building that we see has caught fire after the bombing, but seems like buildings itself are far away from each other, mostly. But are they all residential blocks?
This is entirely a residential district.
Okay.
Only residential buildings, nothing else here.
Which is why the question...
Only residential area.
Which is why
Purely
then the question that I ask again is, was this residential area a deliberate target? It can't be misfiring in a residential block altogether, can it?
Look, it's possible. Despite of, I said, advances we have made in technology, in weapon technologies, a weapon going haywire, a weapon not missing its target and falling a few meters, few hundred meters short or ahead of it is highly possible. And this is one possibility. And second possibility, I said, if they have deliberately targeted it, probably they had information that some kind of militia, military, or foreign fighters are hiding or are being housed in this apartment block. Over to you.
All right. You make a big claim, foreign fighters that could be fighting who are hiding inside those apartment blocks. What do you really mean? Do elaborate for us. Who are these foreign fighters? Have you seen instances of that?
See, I'm not saying hiding. I'm saying they were housed in this building. They are not hiding anymore. But as we see near the Poland border 2 days back, if you remember, Russia claimed 140 foreign fighters were killed in that attack very close to Polish border day before yesterday night, in which Ukraine claimed 35 civilians have died, whereas Russians said they have killed 140 foreign fighters undergoing training in that army training center very close to Polish border, just 18 miles from Polish border.
When you say foreign fighters, where are they from?
They are, most of them are from Georgia and US, but a lot of them are from Europe and as well as from Chechnya and places
they've
like
been
that.
deployed by who, Rajesh?
Say again?
They've been deployed by who? These foreign fighters have come together under whose orders?
See, President Zelensky had made a general appeal a week back inviting foreign fighters from all over the world to fight alongside Ukrainian army against the Russians. And a lot of people paid heed to this call, and a lot of mercenaries and people who really believe in this cause maybe have come forward and now recruiting in large numbers are enrolling themselves for this foreign legion which Ukrainian army has created.
All right, Rajesh, I really request you to stay with us and really appreciate you risking your life there on ground, and you're bringing us those factual developments as it unfolds in the war-torn country of Ukraine. Rajesh himself, in fact, spoke to some of those residents right in the vicinity while that bombing took place. Here's what they said.
What time it happened? What time did the activity took place? 4, 5 in the morning? Okay, but you okay? ये अंग्रेजी नहीं बोल पा रहे हैं, नहीं समझ पा रहे हैं, लेकिन इनका घर तबाह हुआ। ये बिल्डिंग में उस वक्त थे, मैंने इनसे बात की है। इन्होंने बताया कि बिल्डिंग के अंदर थे जब धमाका हुआ इतना बड़ा और ये भाग के निकले, लेकिन ये सुरक्षित है। लेकिन बिल्डिंग अभी भी जल रही है, अभी भी आग की लपटें देखी जा सकती है और ये और फायर हुए हैं, 2 और बम अपने धमाके अभी हुए हैं, शायद कीव शहर के अंदर ही हुए हैं, काफी पास में हैं जो इस वक्त हुए हैं।
All right, there Rajesh has been getting us some voices there from the war-torn country of Ukraine, Kiev, that capital city, which so far did not face attacks it appears now has come under severe fire. There's a blast that's been reported in a residential building. The smoke that you see billowing from that building is a residential area. Contrary to all that claims that Russia has been making that they are not targeting civilians or civilian establishments, here speaks of a very different story. What we see here on your screens is a residential building that's been completely bombed. According to our contributor here, Rajesh, he's said there are hardly any people inside that building. There were few residents, but it was otherwise an empty building. Most of who were there have already fled from that area. So was this a real deliberate attempt to attack that residential area, or was it misfiring? That's something that needs to be established. Rajesh, of course, bringing us more insights from that spot. Rajesh, what the visuals that we see here are scary. You said 8 to 9 days now since there was any kind of attack on Kiev. Residents may have felt slightly comfortable in the last few days, but here again unrest prevails.
Very true. Now the real fear has set in because yesterday, as I showed in the Oblon, a complete residential block was obliterated. It was similar scene seen in Oblon, which is one of the upscale areas of Kiev city, right in the center, not center, but right in the inside the city, much inside from the outskirts, from the suburbs. And this area too is inside the Kiev city now. Now city is being hit because the Russian forces on this side. See, this is on the northwest part of the city, and this is very close to Irpin, where the fighting was taking place. And it appears that Irpin has been more or less now under control of Russian forces. And the 62-kilometer long convoy we have been talking all along, it has artillery elements into it. It has multi-barrel rocket launchers, and now whole Kiev city is within their range, and they can fire at will, and they can destroy any part of Kiev they want at this junction when we're talking right now.
You know, Rajesh, we'd like to get a sense from you when you say that they're prepared, they're fully armed, they're heavily deployed. How soon do you think Russia will manage to make their way into the capital city of Kiev? Because if Kiev is captured, then one can assume that Ukraine itself is a victory for Russia.
See, as a ground offensive of Kiev is concerned, it will still take some time, I think, because they need to clear the access, because logistics is a very important element of war. The soldiers or the tanks or the armored vehicles, they cannot fight till the time they have logistic support. By logistic support, I mean water, food, rations, clothing, spare parts, fuel, ammunition. All this has to fetch up along with the fighting troops, fighting tanks. Till the time it doesn't happen, they cannot launch a full-scale offensive on a megapolis like Kiev, and that will still take time. In my military assessment, it will still take some more days before a full-fledged ground offensive is launched against Kiev. And at the same time, we must remember talks are still going on, and neither Russia nor Ukraine want this beautiful city to be leveled to ground, does not want it to be destroyed totally. So I feel it is still a few days away before this thing happens. Over to you.
No, but, you know, Rajesh, when you say it's still a few days away, what's really stopping the Russian forces? It's not like they're not heavily armed. It's not like they've got good and great deployment when it comes to numbers. They're a huge force, a massive military deployment. We know that's already managed to fan themselves all around Kiev. What's stopping them from approaching the capital city faster than they are?
See, there has been stiff resistance from the Ukrainian forces, be it in the northwest, which is Irpin, Gostomel, Bucha, that side, be it northeast in Brovary and all. They have faced stiff resistance from both sides. And because of this, their progress in both the directions have been quite slow, because there are heavily built up areas. Any army in the world, be it Americans, be it Russians, anyone, it takes a lot of time when you are going through a built up area, and you cannot risk too many people dying, because if you go whole hog into these areas, you will have tremendous amount of casualties. No army can afford that today, and there will be tremendous amount of collateral damage. That also in present scenario, in 21st century, no army can afford to have that blot on their name that they have killed so many civilians in an offensive. So these are the factors which have slowed down their advance in both the directions. And till the time these two axes are not cleared completely and secured by the Russian forces, they cannot launch, it's not possible for them to launch a full-scale ground offensive against Kiev. Over to you.
All right, Rajesh, I really request you to please stay safe. We know that any time now the Russian forces can inch closer to the capital city of Ukraine. They're already ready, gearing to go all around the capital city, but it seems like they've been faced with stiff resistance from Ukrainian forces, something that they may not have expected. And this is, of course, brought in a lot of criticism to Russia as well. They expected to approach Ukraine in those capital city sooner. But this resistance from Ukraine is something that's really stopped them short on their tracks. Thank you very much, Rajesh. I'm going to come back to you on the other side of a short break. Stay with us.
March 10th, 2022. State of war verdict.
We're very, very close to the exact exit poll. We predicted that AAP would sweep Punjab. It has. BJP sweep in Manipur, which is exactly what's happened. We said that the BJP would be comfortably placed in Uttarakhand, which is exactly what's happened.
Let's just look at some of these numbers that we have, particularly Uttar Pradesh. Today, therefore, those tears must be coming from that.
If you cannot get right, then what's the point?
You've done fantastically well. Most of your polls.
Every election has only one winner. India Today.
As Russia declared war on Ukraine, as the world was plunged again into crisis, with the only Indian team in the real war zone.
This is Mariupol. You hear a series. Hear this sound.
I will show you a quick, so to say, bombshell room tour.
I can smell the gunpowder in the air.
And without pause, India Today totally dominates viewership and smashes the competition. When it's the world's biggest news story, there's only one gold standard of journalism. This is Ukraine's true danger zone. Up close and fearless in Ukraine's combat zone. When it's the world's biggest news story, there's only one gold standard of journalism. This is Ukraine's true danger zone. Up close and fearless in Ukraine's combat zone.
You are watching India Today.
Driven by Kia Car Rents, it's from a different world.
Here you're watching India Today's persistent coverage on the Ukraine war. Russian forces are encircling the capital city of Kiev. Here are images coming in from day 1 to day 20. These are really compelling images that speaks of large-scale destruction that has been carried out by the Russian forces in Ukraine as they're attempting at capturing the country. In days to come, we're going to see attacks that will be stepped up. That's what Russia expects to and hopes to. Ukraine forces there putting up stiff resistance, but nonetheless, the damage has been done. These are visuals coming in from all those towns and cities of Ukraine that now sees a deserted look as lakhs of its citizens flee the country, leaving behind all those historic buildings, establishments now reduced to rubble. That's the debris that's literally what's left behind, apart from the spirit of some of those Ukrainians who stand up to fight for their country. India Today continues its coverage on Ukraine. I'm Nabila Jamal. I'm going to take you through all those details. First, the top headlines. Russian troops on brink of overrunning Kiev. Putin forces now firing at will at key capital landmarks. Stunning India Today report from 10 kilometers from Zelensky's palace.
Residential area, only residential buildings in this whole area, no military establishment, no establishment of any strategic importance or any communication center. And this bomb has hit a totally, completely residential sector inside the Kiev city today morning around.
Russia's endless assault across Ukraine. Peaceful cities turn into ashes as shelling continues in residential buildings. Moscow rejects any attack on civilians. A section of Muslim students in hijab fight hot zone, boycott classes and examinations after High Court upholds ban on head coverings on campus. Petitioners ready to battle in the top court. Was hijab row manufactured to stoke disharmony amid examinations? This is the High Court's view as it orders for a probe to nail those unseen hands behind widespread hijab unrest. And Prime Minister Modi hails Kashmir Files, the film in BJP Parliamentary Party meet, says the campaign being run to discredit the film which shows the truth behind Kashmir.
तथ्यों के आधार पर, आर्ट के आधार पर उसकी विवेचना करने के बजाय उसको डिस्क्रेडिट करने के लिए बड़ा मुहिम चला है, आपने देखा होगा.
And WWE legend and two-time Hall of Fame Scott Hall, aka Razor Ramon, who rose to prominence in the 1990s, passes away at the age of 63. Tributes poured in. It's now day 20 of the Russian assault on Ukraine as it continues, and the capital city of Kiev now has come under attack by Russian forces. Russia has stepped up its offensive on Kiev. India Today is the only channel that's reporting right from the war zone. India Today contributor Rajesh Pawar is currently in the capital city of Kiev. He's capturing the full extent of the Russian attack and its destruction. Today, a residential block inside Kiev was bombed. Huge plumes of smoke was seen coming out of that building. Contrary to the claims of Russia that said they're not targeting civilian buildings or civilians, here's a bomb that struck straight at a civilian establishment in Kiev. Let's take a quick look. Rajesh Pawar on ground.
Working here.
Shivatonshki district here in Kiev, a residential block has just been hit Smoke emanating from everywhere. Fire tenders are working to... This is a building behind me which has been bombed just a few minutes back, and fire tenders are everywhere trying to douse the fire. It's a residential block inside the Kiev city which has been hit just now. What time it happened? What time did that explosion took place? 4, 5 in the morning? Okay, but you okay? ये अंग्रेजी नहीं बोल पा रहे हैं, नहीं समझ पा रहे हैं, लेकिन इनका घर तबाह हुआ और ये बिल्डिंग में उस वक्त थे, मैंने इनसे बात की है. इन्होंने बताया कि बिल्डिंग के अंदर थे जब धमाका हुआ इतना बड़ा और ये भाग के निकले, लेकिन ये सुरक्षित है. लेकिन बिल्डिंग अभी भी जल रही है, अभी भी आग की लपटें देखी जा सकती है और ये और फायर हुए हैं, 2 और बम अपने धमाके अभी हुए हैं, शायद कीव शहर के अंदर ही हुए हैं, काफी पास में हैं जो इस वक्त हुए हैं.
All right, I'm going to quickly cut across to Gaurav Sawant. India Today's correspondent Gaurav Sawant is on ground. He's been extensively braving all those attacks along the Ukrainian combat regions, bringing us those factual reports from ground. He's currently in Lviv. Gaurav, so glad that you're doing fine. We know that Russian forces really stepped up their attack as they inched closer to the capital city of Kiev. Now, Gaurav, they claim that they're not attacking civilian establishments, but we see one after the other, civilian buildings, residential buildings are being targeted at unabated. This video that comes in from the capital city of Kiev is shocking.
This indeed is, and that is why Alexei Kuleba, the governor of the Kiev region, is having these areas in the hotspots evacuated as quickly as possible. Residential buildings have also been in the line of Russian fire. They're systematically taking down all infrastructure, military infrastructure, hardware, aircraft manufacturing, tank manufacturing areas across Ukraine, so that Ukraine does not have any military assets, but in the line of fire are also civilian areas. Now, Ukrainians insist that these are being targeted as per plan. They are being targeted to demoralize people in Kiev, people across Ukraine, so that they do not resist the Russian forces ahead of their massive assault that's expected in this area. What we've been told is a large number of troops, tanks, armored personnel carriers are currently on their way to Kiev from across Ukraine. Foreign aid, foreign military hardware and resources available anywhere in the country are being mobilized that can be spared from any sector to be rushed to Kiev for the defense of Kiev. And this includes both men and material. Special trains are being run to carry troops to Kiev. Special trains are being run to carry military hardware to Kiev. So that is why this is a preparation perhaps for that massive assault that Ukraine now is apprehensive about from the Russian side. What we've also been given to believe, Nabila, is that the Russians have regrouped and rearmed, and they've reassessed their strategy and they've split into several smaller groups for a multi-pronged offensive against Kiev. The route from Belarus, from what we've been given to believe, has been secured, and resources and replenishment. For a final assault, Russia would also require a large amount of ammunition standby and a supply chain that's sanitized. What we've been given to believe that in several pockets, resistance has now been neutralized, so that they have their second and third line of defense also in place before that massive assault on Kiev.
Right. Gaurav, we know that millions of people have already fled from different parts of Ukraine, capital city of Kiev. There were many, in fact, as millions have fled, millions still remain in the capital city, hoping against hope that attack will not resume and that they will be safe in their own town. But after 8 days of silence in Kiev, now we hear bombarding has started again. Do we know if civilians are now trying to rush out and find safe passages and green corridors to move to safe spots?
A lot of people have already moved out. A lot of people are in the process of moving out. And Nabila, a very heartening aspect that we saw on that special train that was moving from Kiev to Lviv, not only were there hundreds and hundreds of people on board the train, there were volunteers who were coming out to help. For example, there are people who don't speak the language. There are people who don't know anything about this, and they're trying to get to either the border at Poland or to Hungary or to other areas. And you have locals here coming forward. Imagine this country is under attack. There is war that's going on, and yet locals and volunteers are coming forward to help those who are trapped,
taking them to borders in their cars, or taking them to their homes, or taking them to civilian hotels or any other place out of harm's way. So this was a very heartening aspect to see about the people of Ukraine. They've set up several volunteer desks that if you need help, you can approach them and they will help you get you out of this country. So all of that is also happening, but that fear is writ large on faces of people who are running away from the conflict zone, because that conflict is only about to get more intense with each passing day. Given the kind of men and material, you know, it's visible for all now. It's visible if troop trains, special troop trains are running. If there is a train which is full of armored personal carriers and tanks that is going towards Kiev. So it's open for all to see what lies ahead in the days and weeks to come.
All right, Gaurav, I want you to stay with us, please, as I quickly cut across to Rajesh Pawar, who's on ground currently in Kiev. He's right outside that residential building, bringing us this ground report of the kind of devastation that took place in the capital city of Kiev's residential area. A bomb that's devastated, destroyed that building, as you see on your screens. Let's have a look.
2 blasts yesterday as well. You can see fire there. This tender has been working for last 2 hours, but still a lot of apartment blocks are still burning. If you can see the fire there, and this is a fire tender working here, but still there is fire. It's been burning for last 2.5 hours since it was struck by a missile in the morning today at 4:30 to 5 local time. The complete building has been destroyed, and there was another blast which I saw just before this. It was in the middle of a road. Nearby buildings were damaged, but it fell on a broad road, so not much casualties. But here, I believe, few people have died and a lot of them were injured. See, Russian forces are still a little far away. I mean, the nearest advance which they have made towards Kiev, they are still about 12 to 13 kilometers away. But now the whole Kiev city is within the artillery range of the medium artillery and the multi-barrel rocket launchers, which Russian forces have. The entire city is within their range now. They can fire at will anywhere on any building in Kiev city. It is like about 10 kilometers away from the city center, but it is quite close to Irpin where the fighting was taking place, and maybe just about 10 kilometers from the front lines and 10 kilometers from the center. You can take it that way. And this is Akademia district. It's difficult for me to pronounce it right now, but Akademia district, which is named the place where it is, and it's a fully residential area. Only residential buildings in this whole area, no military establishment, no establishment of any strategic importance or any communication center. And this bomb has hit a completely residential sector inside the Kiev city today morning around 4:30 to 5 local time.
All right, here we have some big news coming in. A big claim that's coming from Ukraine. Remember, Ukraine has put up stiff resistance to the Russian forces and their offensive. Ukraine now claiming that Russia has lost a heavy number of their forces. In fact, this big claim by Ukraine over Russia's losses. Ukraine now claiming that 13,500 troops of Russia have been killed in this war. Ukraine says that they've managed to kill at least 13,500 Russian troops. Ukraine says that 81 Russian warplanes have been demolished, 95 choppers have been destroyed. In fact, 19 people have been killed, 9 are injured in Russia's attack on a TV tower in Rivne. Gaurav Sawant, who's joining us live. Gaurav, over to you. Ukraine, we know, has now resisted stiffly for at least the last 20 days, which it appears that Russia never expected. This kind of resistance by Ukraine so long, for 20 long days, is what Russia never hoped. But it has happened. Ukraine now claiming that they've managed to kill at least 13,500 troops of the Russian forces. This is a big number and a big claim, while Russia has not accepted or given this claim any credibility. Russia, so far, their latest update is that about 500 odd of their soldiers have been killed in this war. But this claim of 13,500 coming in from Ukraine seems substantial.
It indeed is, and this is a claim that's made by the Ministry of Defense. In fact, every evening they give an update, and this morning, day 20 of the conflict, they've claimed that they've killed over 13,000 Russian soldiers, destroyed more than 90 fighter planes and 80 helicopters, both attack helicopters and transport helicopters. They've said that a large number of Russian tanks and armored personnel carriers, more than 800, have been destroyed by the Ukrainian forces, and there are images that are going viral. Of course, verification, is extremely difficult because, as you very rightly pointed out, Nabila, the Russians say they've had about 500 odd casualties, fatalities. The Ukrainians say you should look at the trucks, and they've released some images of trucks that Ukraine has claimed are carrying dead bodies of Russian soldiers to Belarus. And they're saying in several cities up to Minsk, there are no places in mortuaries, as mortuaries in Belarus, according to Ukraine, are filled with bodies of Russian soldiers killed in combat. But while this could also be seen as part of information warfare and psychological warfare, and of course an attempt to keep the morale of own country up, it does remain a fact that the Russians have had military damage in terms of their aircraft, their rockets, their missiles, the disruptive technology that's being used by the Ukrainians, the Bayraktar unmanned combat aerial vehicles. Images have gone viral, circulated by the defense minister, by the chief of the armed forces, by the Ministry of Defense, that actually show these unmanned combat aerial vehicles and very slow, Turkish-made UCAVs that have destroyed Russian missiles, tanks, artillery pieces, and convoys. And they've said that this is where disruptive technology has given them an edge. They're trying to acquire more from Turkey. They're also asking United States to facilitate the arrival and the acquisition not just of Javelin anti-tank guided missiles, of the NATO anti-tank guided missiles made by Sweden and UK, but also these UCAVs, the unmanned combat aerial vehicles that actually target Russian convoys, for which Russia so far, according to Ukraine, doesn't have a countermeasure to.
All right, Gaurav, we're looking at Ukrainians putting up stiff resistance with whatever limited capacity of military arms, ammunitions, and even their numbers in terms of the military capacity is way smaller than that of Russia. But still, the kind of resistance is really exemplary. At least from what we see on ground, they've managed to fight back and claim that at least 13,500 odd Russian forces have been killed. This is Ukraine's claim, needs to be confirmed. Now, the capital city of Kiev is bracing for an all-out assault. With each passing day and each passing hour, in fact, Putin's troops are encircling Kiev. In a bid to capture Ukraine's crown, Putin is now raining missiles on residential buildings in Kiev suburbs, contrary to their claims that they are not targeting residential establishments or civilians. Here's a quick look at what happened today on day 20.
The big battle for Kiev is underway. In a bid to capture Ukraine's capital city, Vladimir Putin is raining missiles. Even civilian areas are not spared. On Monday, Russian shells hit a building in Obolon, a residential district in the heart of Kiev. At least one person was killed and 3 injured in the bombardment. Death, destruction and despair are visible everywhere.
I woke up. Actually, my mom woke me up. There was smoke and dust everywhere. We hid inside the closet. We thought that we were being captured, that the Russians were getting in through the door. But we were wrong. We got out of the apartment and saw that the staircase was not there anymore. Everything was on fire. We didn't know what to do. So we ran out to the balcony.
The Obolon, a district under attack, is around 10 kilometers away from the presidential building. The presidential building is the main office of the National Security and Defense Council and also the presidential administration of Ukraine. The Russian bombardment close to the building means with each passing hour, Putin's war machine is getting closer to President Volodymyr Zelensky. The Ukrainian leader, however, has refused to bow down or leave the city.
I stay here in Kiev, on Bankova, and not hiding. I'm not afraid of anyone, as long as needed to win our national war.
The capital city is bracing for an all-out assault even as talks continue. The negotiations between the two warring nations have completed 4 rounds, but there's been no breakthrough in sight. Unless a ceasefire is agreed upon soon, Kiev could fall to the Russian troops. With Rajesh Pawar in Kiev, Bureau Report, India Today.
Now, it's the 20th day of the war. Russian assault still continues while Russians try to capture the capital city of Kiev. Other major cities are witnessing this widespread destruction. Despite Russia's assurance that it won't target civilians during its invasion, the reality on ground is completely different. The port city of Mariupol is suffering the worst humanitarian impact of this war. Completely surrounded by Russian troops, the city is now seeing relentless bombardment. In Kharkiv, the city center was completely destroyed by Russian airstrikes. At least 2 civilians were killed in the airstrikes. Meanwhile, Ukraine has said that it would create 10 humanitarian corridors to evacuate civilians. We're looking at shellings and bombings in the meanwhile continuing unabated. Now, as the port city of Mariupol continues to be under siege, a convoy of cars left Mariupol in the first successful attempt for a humanitarian corridor out of that encircled Ukrainian city. This came after several failed attempts to arrange people to leave Mariupol, and finally, after talks between the two countries, a few safe passages were created, resulting in evacuation that took place smoothly. Here's a look.
This is what life has become in Mariupol. An existence punctuated by the sound of Russian planes and shelling, and by fear and grief. People hoping it won't be them next.
We have no information at all. We know nothing. It's as if we are living in a dark forest.
Russian forces continue to attack the southern Ukrainian port city. More than 400,000 people are trapped in what the mayor calls an apocalypse. Water and electricity supplies are cut, food and medicine scarce. Some people managed to evacuate on Monday, but not very many. In a makeshift hospital in the city, a baby girl is born into a world her mother could never have imagined. Moments that should be filled only with joy are overshadowed by fear.
She survived after maternity hospital number 3 was bombed and ruined. She was brought here. All birthing mothers have lived through so many things.
Maternity hospital number 3 was destroyed by Russian shelling on Wednesday. Mariana also survived. She's named her baby Veronica.
We were lying in wards when glass frames, windows and walls flew apart. We don't know how it happened. We were in our wards and some had time to cover themselves and some didn't.
Emergency workers had rescued this woman after the attack, but doctors were unable to save her or her baby. In the eastern city of Kramatorsk, people are picking through what's left of their homes. A 4th round of talks between Russian and Ukrainian negotiators was paused, but is set to resume on Tuesday. Meanwhile, Ukraine's president issued a warning to Western powers on Monday after a Russian attack near NATO member Poland's border.
And now, I repeat again, if you do not close the skies, it's only a matter of time before Russian missiles fall on your territory, on NATO territory, on the homes and citizens of NATO countries.
Russian forces continue to target western parts of the country. This TV tower in the city of Rivne was hit by missiles. And in the city of Lviv, another night of air sirens ended, bringing another day of uncertainty. Since the beginning of the invasion, Lviv has been considered as something of a safe haven. But with a growing number of attacks in western Ukraine, some people here are really starting to feel that the war is closing in. People in the city are preparing for the worst.
Today we completely don't have any safety location or region in our country, and so It was predictable because when we first time see that Russian troops killed on the main streets of Kharkiv, Kiev, Mariupol, children, they bombed children hospitals so they can use everything.
Yura says Lviv feels safer than his home city of Kiev for now, but he knows that could change.
I don't understand what...
Tell me what... All right, I'm going to quickly cut across to Rajesh, who's right there in the capital city of Kiev. Rajesh, take us through what you see on ground. We see thick smoke billowing that residential area in Kiev. What has happened?
Look, if you can see behind me right now, the fire has been more or less doused, but they're still working on it. Fire tenders are still working full time, and there is still smoke and steam coming out of the building. This is the state right now. This is after 4 hours of continuous effort to douse this fire. This is the state right now. Look, still black smoke blowing there on top of the building, and the fire tenders working. This is the state after these firefighters have been trying their best for last 4 hours. This building was hit about 4.5 hours back. Look, that black smoke coming still there.
Rajesh, this is the smoke from that same building, or are attacks happening even as we speak? Have you heard of any shelling or strikes in the last few hours?
Look, I've been in this place for last 45 minutes now. We were the first one. I was the first one to reach here, much before any international media could reach. These people are just arriving or arrived just half an hour back. So we were the first one to reach here. And when I was reporting from here on Aaj Tak and on India Today, I heard 3-4 more blasts in near vicinity, maybe about 3 kilometers. And these blasts are definitely inside Kiev city, probably on the outskirts. But Kiev is now being targeted. Look, another blast we could hear. This was another blast if you heard just 2 seconds back when I was talking to you. Right. So blasts are now being heard inside the Kiev city at a regular interval. This what is,
and that's why I ask you, Rajesh, that's why the question is relevant here still, that is this deliberate target? We're looking at residential areas now being targeted. Is it deliberate attempts by the Russian forces to deter people and Ukrainians, of course, from resisting this this approach from the Russian forces? They're trying to enter a capital city of Kiev. They do not want resistance, but unfortunately they're faced with one.
Look, I cannot say is it deliberate or not. It could be a lack of precision in the munition. It could be just, or information that some kind of military personnel or militia is being housed in this building. Or it could be deliberate. It could be to put pressure on Ukrainians so that they come to the negotiating table, so that talks progress as the Russians want. It could be anything, Nabila. It's impossible to guess, to know what exactly is happening. We can just make a informed analysis, and this could be any of these 4 probabilities I've just told you.
Right. Rajesh, Ukrainians, many civilians are basically taking up arms and ammunition and standing up for their country. They're all doubling up as soldiers. So it could be slightly confusing and concerning, of course, for the Russian forces. While they attack these residential establishments, they're of course, probably looking at the fact that civilians care no less. They are now fighting for their country, so they are equal to soldiers. So an attack will not matter to them.
Look, I don't know how much Russia values this, or Russian forces are taking this factor into consideration. But I must say the spirits of the people here are really high. Ukrainian peoples, I'm really impressed with the kind of spirit, the kind of patriotism they have displayed. It's a big salute to their spirit. And a lot of people are ready to fight till the end here. And that's what I've been witnessing all around. How much difference will it make to the Russian army or their tactics, I can't say, but on ground, yes, definitely people are willing to fight. Young people, old people. I've seen 65, 70, almost 70-year-old people standing on checkposts with a rifle in hand. And it's really, really very touching moments. And it's a big salute to their spirit and their patriotism. Nabila.
Well, certainly a big salute to their spirit. Undoubtedly, they are fighting for their country, giving up on their families. Many of them have moved out. Women, children have, in large numbers, been evacuated. They have fled from that country. The men have stayed behind. It's not just the men. Many, many women also, Ukrainian women who stayed behind, taken up arms to only fight and stand for their country in this dark, dark hour. We know that Russian forces have encircled the the capital city of Kiev. They've come very, very close. In your assessment, how far are they, Rajesh? How long do you think for the Russian troops will take to come and capture Kiev formally?
Look, Nabila, this is the northwest part of the city where I'm standing right now. And this is pretty close to the area of Irpin, Gostomol and Bucha, the area which has witnessed heavy fighting in last 8 days. And Russian progress, though slow, but have been making progress continuously in these areas. And my reading now, as the war is entering the suburbs now, on the outskirts of city proper, I think Irpin, Bucha and Gostomol, this whole complex is more or less under Russian control now. We are not allowed to go that side, but it appears that they're pretty close. See, there's another blast, if you could hear. These blasts are inside the city now. These blasts you could hear in Irpin or in Bucha or in Brovary, but now inside the city, these blasts is a regular affair, and you can hear them at a regular interval. So the war is coming closer and closer, inching closer and closer, because the progress is slow, because of stiff resistance of the Ukrainian army, but it is making progress, though a bit slow, probably slower than what Russians expected, and they are coming closer to the city. Nabila.
You know, it's not just the Ukrainians and their courage that we want to laud, Rajesh. We really want to laud your courage and bravery as you stand there in that war-torn area of Kiev. We're looking at bombs that are taking place right behind you, the sounds that you bring to us. We are shuddering right here. It's such spine-chilling visuals and noises that are coming from behind you. Really laud your courage for standing there and bringing us this factual report. Really appreciate it. We're really hoping that you are safe. Is there a way for people who want to flee from that area, who are currently troubled and worried about their safety, for them to leave that capital city of Kiev? Is there a way? Is there a corridor, a green corridor that has been decided upon as today bombarding and blasting has begun in Kiev?
Look, Nabila, it's very much possible. Our team yesterday left from Kiev in a train towards Lviv. So a lot of people are still leaving, and you'll be surprised, and it's amazing. Metro service, which stopped totally on the second day of the war, has resumed, though in a very limited way between few stations only, but it has resumed. I don't know how to read that move, but it has resumed, and whatever people are left behind are trying to fight back, trying to live as normally as possible, and they look organized. Things are changing on a human level also. It's not just the war. You know, the old people are standing and they're not willing to go, despite of their children telling them to leave the city. They're not willing to go. The human angle of this war, the humanitarian angle of this war is amazing the way it's unfolding right now. There are heartbreaking scenes of people crying and loss of any kind of hope in their eyes, which is really heartbreaking. Small children suffering, but on the other side, it is the human side, which is bravery. People say, this is our house, and we will fight.
Absolutely. Your observations here is something that India Today has been, of course, saying from day one. Many of those Ukrainian citizens, they're really putting up such courage to stand for their country in this deepest, darkest hour. You see residential buildings there, as Rajesh shows us. This is right behind him, where a residential building was bombed. Bombs currently being striked at the national capital of Kiev. We're looking at strikes and sounds that are coming in constantly in the last few hours. It seems like Russian troops, as they've encircled the capital city of Kiev, they've now upped their attack and offensive on their target number one, Kiev. Now, India Today has been constantly on this reportage from day one. All our reporters on ground bringing us all those details from that war-torn zone, ground zero. It's day 20 of this Russian assault on Ukraine that continues in the capital city of Kiev. That's now come under severe fire and attack. Russia has stepped up its offensive in the capital city. These images on your screens here are of the residential block inside Kiev city, which was bombed. Huge plumes of smoke were seen coming out of that one building. Contrary to all the reports that Russia makes that they're not targeting civilian establishments or civilians, here are residential areas in the capital city of Kiev that's now been bombarded. Kiev is now under attack. Russia stepping up its offensive. Images on your screens here are of the residential block of Kiev that was bombed. Huge plumes of smoke coming out of that building, really a telling story that begins to unfold in Kiev. And now Russian missiles hit residential buildings in the center of Ukrainian Kiev. painting a totally devastating picture of buildings and homes collapsed. Videos showing the residential complexes being charred after missile attacks. Now it's raining missiles and airstrikes even in the second largest city of Ukraine. These visuals are the aftermath of airstrikes at night in Kharkiv. Fire erupts as airstrikes rain in the city. Horror arrives in Ukrainian cities as Russia continues to up its assault. Now, in an absolutely heart-wrenching event, the images on your screens here is that of the Russian army tanks who are having fun by shelling residential complexes in the small city of Volnovakha in Ukraine. And amid non-stop heavy shelling, Russian invaders destroy the city of Velika Dymetka, leaving it in ruins. Shelling continues in that region, and horror of shelling a bus stop where Ukrainian civilians are staying is currently the video that's captured on your camera, on cameras that you see on your screens. The Russian assault continues to become uglier, with now residential complexes becoming the main target of missile attacks. This comes on your screens, the aftermath of destruction that was caused by heavy shelling inside the city, tearing everything apart while relief works currently being carried out in those cities. Large plumes of smoke emerged from a site of Chuguev in Ukrainian city Kharkiv. In fact, rockets were launched by Russian occupiers targeting those civilian establishments. And more Russian troops were called to launch a strong offensive against the peaceful rally in Mariupol city, as images capture large numbers of soldiers present at the site aiming to disperse protesting Ukrainians. And as Russia assault intensifies even on day 20 of the war, drone footage captures the heavy destruction caused by buildings, schools and residential complexes after being shelled non-stop in the city of Mariupol. This is the aerial view that shows complete devastation in that port city. Continuing to shield their nation, Ukrainians in full gear undertake combat works of allied forces in a bid to defend the city of Mariupol, which is one of the worst affected cities. In these images on your screens here, full force resistance by Ukrainian army shows a defiant comeback by Ukraine. And devastating visuals of destruction all around the city in the city of Donetsk. On your screens here, this is the aftermath of continuous shelling and bombing by Russian troops, launching an aggressive offensive even as war enters day 20. All right, coming up next, Russian troops on the brink of overrunning Kiev. Putin's forces now firing at will at key capital landmarks, including residential areas. Here are the images that we bring to you from different parts of the capital city of Kiev, where Russian forces have already attacked and are now currently gearing up to attack several other key installations and establishments in that capital city. On day 20 of this war, Russia upping the offensive.
Crypto Watch brought to you by BitBNS.
Can hear more blasts that are taking place. We are moving away from this area. We are being told to leave this area because it's not safe to be here. Kiev braces for an imminent attack over the next 24 to 48 hours. With cameraman Pawan Kumar reporting from Ground Zero, Kiev, Ukraine, Gaurav Sawant for India Today.
Grounded in journalism, on the ground reporting.
only on India Today TV. When it's the world's biggest news story, there's only one gold standard of journalism.
Rahul Kanwal, 23 years of experience, 5 conflicts covered, unmatched time in war zone.
The first embedded operation in the history of Indian television journalism.
Gaurav Sawant, 28 years of reporting, 8 conflicts covered, unmatched hours in conflict areas.
Actual firing is taking place, the grads are firing.
Shivarur, 19 years of reporting, 5 conflicts covered, unmatched view of international crossfires.
And the attack guns are firing away.
Geeta Mohan, 18 years of reporting, 3 conflicts covered. When the world is at war, there is no compromise on India Today.
This is Ukraine's true danger zone. Up close and fearless in Ukraine's combat zone. When it's the world's biggest news story, there's only one gold standard of journalism.
All right, as Russia ups its offensive and encircles the capital city of Kiev, we are looking at voices coming in from Moscow. Tatiana Kukareva, Deputy Head, Sputnik News, Moscow, joining us live right here. Tatiana, Russia claims that civilians are not the target and civilian establishments are not what they're looking at. But here, this bomb that's struck at one of those residential buildings speaks of a very different story. What has happened?
I wish I saw the screen and what you're showing right now, actually.
This is of a residential building being bombed and it's currently under fire.
Look, again, like I wish I saw the actual pictures, or at least the actual place that we're talking about. What has been happening and what we've spoken about repeated number of times, is that Ukraine's armed forces have been putting artillery, have been putting machinery into residential blocks. They've been occupying actual apartments with snipers and stuff. So it's no surprise that the buildings come under fire if there is a place that has been taken by the Ukraine's armed forces. In the meantime, before we actually see, we actually know what was the rocket that hit it, there is no confirmation that the rocket has come from the Russian side at all. We've had multiple cases of Ukraine actually firing at its own civilian buildings. There is, as far as at least we've heard, there is a lot of the paramilitary parts of the Ukrainian armed forces that, that take weird measures, to say the least, in this conflict. So unfortunately, without me seeing the pictures, first of all, what building are we talking about, and without actual information of where
which side. The Ministry of Defense always publishes, the Russian Ministry of Defense always publishes all of the pictures of all of the fire targets that they've destroyed so far. So, I mean, we'll have to wait for the briefing to understand if it indeed came from the Russian side, that missile. In the meantime, it could have come from, unfortunately and sadly, there have been precedents of Ukraine shooting their own people and bombing their own sites.
Well, this is a big claim that's coming from you. Ukrainians themselves could have targeted their own residential areas only to try and unleash their propaganda, accusing Russia of doing so. But here, Russian troops have encircled Kiev. How far are you and what's delaying you from really capturing the capital city? Why have you stopped in your tracks?
Well, I personally, if my calculations are correct, I think that I personally am about 1,300 kilometers away, if my memory does not, mislead me.
Aren't you aware of the movements of the troops?
I do understand. I am aware of the movements of the troops, the ones that, but you have to understand, and this is of utmost importance, that the ongoing operation is an ongoing operation. So the Ministry of Defense does not announce the movement of the troops before they actually move, which I'm sure you understand is of utmost
So then you cannot specifically put your finger to whether this is the Russian troops that have targeted the residential building or it's Ukraine. Now let's shift focus to what Ukraine claims.
Yeah. Nobody can, not just us.
Right. So we'll let that aside. Ukraine here claiming that they've managed to kill 13,500 odd Russian soldiers. Russia has not given out account on that. There's no confirmation that Russia has given except for 438 soldiers that you all have confirmed dead in this war. Would you substantiate those claims made by Ukraine?
458, actually. Okay. And of course not. I mean, the number that they're saying, first of all, they change daily. The latest number that I've heard of from the Ukrainian side is 15,000. And it's quite a claim if you can, you understand how, again, we have a very highly trained and highly skilled armed forces. And to claim that Ukraine could have managed to kill 15,000 of those is quite a claim. Unfortunately, it has not been backed up by at least images. I mean, 15,000 dead bodies is quite a few of them. And from the pictures that we've seen, as a journalist, I have to actually go through all of the footage for obvious reasons. And I mean, there's not even 100. We'll also get targeted by, by hackers and by DDoS attacks. So I receive about 30 to 100 letters with photographs of supposedly killed Russian troops. And even there, it's barely 100. So forgive me being cynical in this situation, but until Ukraine can back those claims up, and they're coming up with ridiculous stories of, makeshift crematoriums, of Russians burning dead bodies and stuff. Again, until they can back them up, I would stay clear of those numbers. We have to check them.
Right. Tatiana, the commander-in-chief, the army general there in Ukraine has almost called Russian troops' invincibility a mere myth. He's almost mocking Russia, saying that if at all Russia planned to go, in fact, moved as per plan, then they should have managed to enter Kiev by now. It's 20 days on and they're still stuck at those points. They're not able to infiltrate only because Ukraine is putting up stiff resistance. How do you look at this mockery?
Of course he's saying that because he has to keep up the morale of his own troops. I mean, I probably would say the same if I were in his place, because otherwise he would have to actually literally tell them to go get themselves to surrender. Look, we're in day 20, as you rightly noticed, and the one and the only reason why the Russian forces, they're not stuck, they're moving daily. We have daily updates of the movements of the troops obviously after those movements have actually been successfully done. Also, you do know that some of the battalions that are of the best, in the best shape and our most skilled battalions are on the forefront right there outside of Kiev. And I wouldn't joke with those guys. The only reason that they're not taking Kiev by force, and I do believe we've repeated that daily throughout this operation, is the fact that there are civilians inside of that city. I mean, it would have been taken 20 days ago if that was the utmost, the goal of the operation, to take Kiev. It could have been done in 1 day, 2 days maximum. Just bomb it to the ground and take it. It's not that difficult. The difficult part is keeping civilians alive and focusing on the military targets, which are being destroyed on a daily basis. We've been speaking about this, with the city of Mariupol, that has the Azov battalion has put up quite a resistance, but in the end, it's the same story.
Tatiana, if I could get your word on this, would you officially announce what are those key areas or cities that Russia has taken complete control of?
The key cities that, excuse me, the connection.
Go on, we can hear you.
Repeat the question. I know, I could not hear your complete question.
The cities that Russia has taken complete control of, because Ukraine says that there is no area that Russia has fully invaded or taken control of. But we know that y'all have managed to strike several areas like Mariupol, the port city. Would you be able to establish for us here, what are those key areas that y'all have managed to take full control?
Of course. Yesterday, our armed forces have actually confirmed that Mariupol has been taken into control, and they've been doing the evacuation of civilians from the city of Mariupol. And then it goes to the south, the city of Melitopol, that is just outside Crimea, actually. Obviously the full areas of Lugansk and Donetsk republics have been taken into control. Kherson is under Russian control. So the top priorities right now, I'd say, would be Kharkov and Kiev, which are still resisting. And, again, those are huge cities, bigger cities, where a lot of the civilian population would come into incredible harm if the assault should go as the Ukrainian side claims it would. I mean, we've been hearing for them saying that now today they're going to storm Kiev. Look, the Russian side has confirmed they're not storming Kiev because, again, there are just too many civilians. We've been trying to ask for Ukraine to evacuate. The Russian Ministry of Defense has been opening humanitarian corridors daily. Unfortunately, the Ukrainian side keeps denying them. It's a two-way street, and if the civilian population was not of the utmost importance for the Russian troops, then again question it. Why are they still not in the center of Kiev? I mean, it could have gone very differently. It's a very strong army, and it's a much bigger army than the Ukrainians.
All right, we know the capacity of Russia, we know the kind of arms, ammunitions, the deployment as well, but somehow the fact that this is day 20 of this war, Russia hasn't managed to fully capture Kiev. We're, of course, now looking at large-scale destruction in many cities, but there is no formal control yet. But we hear your word and we hear you loud and clear. Russia does not want to take over by force. You all are inching closer strategically. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time, Tatiana, for joining us. All All right, shifting focus here, the film Kashmir Files has now been come under large debate. It's creating waves in the country and also sparked a political showdown. BJP and the Congress are now embroiled in a face-off over who is to blame for this exodus of Kashmiri Pandits in the 1990s. And now Prime Minister Modi has spoken out in the parliament. Prime Minister Modi has said that films like Kashmiri Files should continue to be made and that these films expose the truth. Taking a jibe at the Congress, Prime Minister Modi has said that at the BJP parliamentary party meet, those who tried to hide the truth for years are now protesting. BJP, meanwhile, has responded, hitting back at the Congress and blaming the party for what happened to Kashmiri Pandits. Political war of words is now reignited after Vivek Agnihotri's film Kashmir Files released, which has now received rave reviews and has been hailed by the Kashmiri Pandit community.
पंचतंत्र लिखा गया वो कश्मीर हमारा था, तू जानता है। इन दिनों आपने देखा होगा कश्मीर फाइल फिल्म की चर्चा चल रही है और जो लोग हमेशा फ्रीडम ऑफ एक्सप्रेशन के झंडे लेकर के घूमते हैं वो पूरी जमात बौखला गई है पिछले 5-6 दिन से। और ये फिल्म का तथ्यों के आधार पर, आर्ट के आधार पर उसकी विवेचना करने के बजाय उसको डिस्क्रेडिट करने के लिए बड़ा मुहिम चला है। आपने देखा होगा एक पूरी इकोसिस्टम कोई सत्य उजागर करने का साहस करे, उसको जो सत्य लगा उसने प्रस्तुत करने की कोशिश की, लेकिन उस सत्य को न समझने की तैयारी, न स्वीकारने की तैयारी है, न ही दुनिया इसको देखे इसके लिए उनकी मंजूरी है। जिस प्रकार का षड्यंत्र पिछले 5-6 दिन से चल रहा है।
All right, coming up on the other side, as Russia encircles the capital city of Ukraine, Kiev, India Today's exclusive reports from on ground on the other side of a short break, showing you large-scale devastation and how Kiev now gears up for this Russian invasion. Stay with us.
You are watching India Today.
Crypto Watch brought to you by BitBNS.
As Russia declared war on Ukraine, as the world was plunged again into crisis, with the only Indian team in the real war zone.
This is Mariupol. You hear a series. Hear this sound.
I will show you a quick, so to say, bombshell room tour.
I can smell the gunpowder in the air.
And without pause, India Today totally dominates viewership and smashes the competition. When it's the world's biggest news story, there's only one gold standard of journalism. When it's the world's biggest news story, there's only one gold standard of journalism. This is Ukraine's true danger zone. Up close and fearless in Ukraine's combat zone.
You are watching India Today. You are watching India Today. you
The world is talking about the possibility of a nuclear war. Putin has kept his forces on high alert. But this raises the question that how many nuclear bombs does Russia have? And how many countries are equipped with nuclear technology? Did you know that out of 195 countries in the world, there are only 9 countries who share the technology of making a nuclear bomb? How is nuclear power connected to world wars? Without further ado, let's dive into the history. The US was the first country to successfully test a nuclear bomb in July 1945. Not long after, the US dropped a nuclear bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki of Japan. Both bombs caused more than 2 lakh casualties. After the surrender of Japan, the US powers were being demonstrated in the world. This resulted in the end of World War II. But after seeing the powers of the US, the USSR accelerated its own nuclear research programs. This unleashed the Cold War era. Both superpowers were in a race to gain more technological supremacy. Both the US and USSR kept adding their nuclear arsenals with the aim to threaten each other with an attack. Amid the Cold War chaos, the United Kingdom tested their first nuclear bomb. By this time, the arms race between the US and USSR had escalated. Both countries developed advanced technologies and nuclear submarines. At the peak of the Cold War, Russia had more than 45,000 warheads, whereas the
Going across straight to proceedings from the upper house of Parliament, where the Minister of External Affairs is speaking. Listen in.
26 lakh refugees. The entire exercise involved a whole of the government approach, with the Prime Minister himself chairing review meetings almost on a daily basis. At the MEA, we monitored the evacuation operations on a 24/7 basis as well. We got excellent support from all concerned ministries and organizations, including the Ministry of Civil Aviation, Ministry of Defense, the National Disaster Response Force, Indian Air Force, and private airlines. There was an effective coordination with state governments in ensuring that arrangements made by them for return of Indian students to their respective states once they landed in Delhi or Mumbai. Mr. Chairman, let me apprise members of the steps taken in advance of the actual conflict situation. As tensions increased, the Embassy of India in Ukraine had started a registration drive for Indian nationals in January 2022. As a result, around 20,000 Indian nationals registered with our embassy in Kiev. Most of the Indian nationals were students who were pursuing medical studies in Ukrainian universities that were dispersed throughout the country. More than half the students were in universities in eastern Ukraine that borders Russia and has been the epicenter of conflict so far. Students hail from 35 states and UTs of India, with more than 1,000 students each from the states of Kerala, UP, Haryana, Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Bihar, and Rajasthan. In view of the continued build-up of tensions in February, the embassy issued an advisory on 15 February 2022 advising Indian nationals in Ukraine whose stay is not essential to leave the country temporarily. It also advised Indian nationals not to travel to Ukraine or to undertake non-essential movements within Ukraine. Members will appreciate that such advisories are extremely unusual and that very issue is itself a serious caution. Further advisories were also given on 20 February and 22 February, pressing students to leave Ukraine. Air bubble restrictions then in force were immediately lifted in consultation with the Ukrainian side to increase the number of direct flights. As a result, around 4,000 Indian nationals departed from Ukraine by direct and indirect flights till 23 February 2022. Despite our efforts, however, a large majority of students elected to continue staying in Ukraine. We must understand their predicament in this regard. There was a natural reluctance to leave educational institutions and affect their studies. Some universities actively discouraged it and showed reluctance to offer online courses. Many of them received conflicting advice regarding safety. The challenges of travel back may have also been a factor. In the period leading to 24 February, the political signals were confusing as well. Public urgings not to be taken in by alarmism and reports of forced withdrawals created a confusing picture. The net result was that about 18,000 Indian citizens were caught in the midst of conflict when it began. The ministry started reinforcing the strength of our mission in Ukraine in anticipation of a difficult situation. Additional Russian-speaking officers were deputed to Kiev on 22 February to our embassy to keep in constant touch with distressed Indian nationals in Ukraine and their families in India. A situation room was established in Delhi on 16 February. The embassy took parallel measures. The MES situation room was ramped up to over 100 personnel, allowing them to respond to over 13,000 calls and 9,000 emails till date. The strategy for evacuation was to take out Indian nationals from western neighboring countries of Ukraine, that were Poland, Slovak Republic, Hungary, Romania and Moldova. This was necessitated due to the closure of Ukrainian airspace on 24 February. To carry this out, we were required to strengthen our missions in these countries so that they could deploy teams at the border points, set up transit camps, operate effective control rooms, and facilitate the large number of air flights. Along with that, they also handled incoming humanitarian assistance. 47 additional MEA officials were dispatched to ensure these objectives, supplementing a pre-existing embassy strength of 58. Honourable members should appreciate that along with our embassy personnel, these officials have gone to extraordinary lengths in difficult circumstances to ensure that Operation Ganga was successful. Their constant intervention at border checkpoints helped to address severe challenges posed by over-congestion. The liaison with local governments and community organizations was responsible for the boarding, lodging, and medical attention of evacuees. And of course, they handled the complexity of flight operations on the ground so that the return home was a smoother process. Under Operation Ganga, 90 flights have been operated, out of which 76 were civilian flights and 14 were Indian Air Force flights. The evacuation flights were from Romania, Poland, Hungary and Slovakia. While Indian Air Force rose to the occasion, most of the private airlines, and that includes Air India Express, Indigo, SpiceJet, Vistara, Go Air and Air Asia, also participated enthusiastically. During this period, Prime Minister himself spoke to the presidents of Russia and Ukraine on multiple occasions. He specifically took up the issue of safe evacuation of Indian nationals, especially from Kharkiv and Sumy. Prime Minister also spoke to the Prime Ministers of Romania, Slovak Republic and Hungary and the President of Poland to seek their support for facilitation of entry of Indian nationals to their countries. I most sincerely thank these partner nations for opening their doors and helping our citizens in our hour of need. Chairman, sir, I was also in constant touch with my own counterparts in Ukraine, Russia, Poland, Romania, Hungary, Slovakia and Moldova for similar reasons. Foreign Secretary maintained contact with ambassadors of Ukraine and Russia in New Delhi, while our ambassador in Kiev and Moscow followed up with their respective capitals. Prime Minister deputed 4 union ministers as special envoys to Romania, Hungary, Slovak Republic and Poland to facilitate Operation Ganga. This included Shri Jyotiraditya Scindia to Romania, Shri Kiren Rijiju to Slovak Republic, Shri Hardeep Singh Puri to Hungary, and General Shri VK Singh to Poland. Their personal supervision of the evacuation process made a substantial difference in the ease of border crossing and the care taken of our citizens thereafter. The most challenging part of the evacuation exercise was that of evacuating Indian nationals from Kharkiv and Sumy. Both the places witnessed heavy shelling and airstrikes. Many options were worked out to evacuate students through buses and trains. A team from our embassy in Moscow had also been sent to the Russia-Ukraine border to facilitate the possible evacuation of Indian students through Belgorod and Kursk. Many students from Kharkiv were moved to Pesochin in view of anticipated escalation of hostilities. While our efforts were able to stave off some of the more extreme scenarios, their presence in a safety zone allowed for subsequent ferrying through buses to the western borders. The Sumy evacuation, which was the last one on a significant scale, was also extremely complex as our students faced the prospect of being caught in crossfire. Their evacuation from the city needed a credible ceasefire, a daunting challenge in the current situation. This finally materialized, Chairman Sir, due to the personal intervention of the Prime Minister himself with the Presidents of Ukraine and Russia. Noting the extraordinary challenges before us, we also dispatched a special team of senior officers to the vicinity of Sumy. Their coordination with the military forces deployed there, with the ICRC and the arrangement of logistics was responsible for the final outcome. During the entire period, our embassy in Ukraine has been working incessantly to contact Indian nationals, arranging and facilitating transport, coordinating with local authorities, providing food, etc. Throughout the evacuation exercise, our embassy was in constant touch with the Ukrainian authorities. We appreciate their positive response to our requests during this period. Their intervention was responsible for running additional trains needed for the evacuation exercise. The embassy also provided travel documents within a very, very short time in cases where Indian nationals had lost their passports. They also partnered with neighboring embassies to resolve challenging situations on the border. On 13th March, in view of the rapidly deteriorating security situation in Ukraine, including attacks in its western part, it was decided to temporarily relocate the Indian embassy in Ukraine to Poland. This situation will be reassessed in light of further developments. Honourable members should also recognise the great contribution.
S. Shashankar bringing the parliament up to speed with the developments vis-a-vis the rescue operations and the evacuation work that was carried out in war-hit Ukraine. It's day 20 of Russian assault on Ukraine, and that continues. It is the capital city now, Kiev, that is under attack. Russia has stepped up its offensive on Kiev. India Today is the only channel that is reporting right from the war zone. India Today contributor Rajesh Pawar was in Kiev, capturing the full extent of the Russian attack and its destruction. Today, a residential block inside Kiev was bombed. Huge plumes of smoke were seen coming out of this building.
Fire tenders are working.
Two blasts yesterday as well. You can see fire there. Fire, this tender has been working for last 2 hours, but still a lot of apartment blocks are still burning. If you can see the fire there. And this is a fire tender working here, but still there is fire. It's been burning for last 2.5 hours since it was struck by a missile in the morning today at 4:30 to 5 local time. The complete building has been destroyed, and there was another blast which I saw just before this. It was in the middle of a road. Nearby buildings were damaged, but it fell on a broad road, so not much casualties. But here I believe few people have died and a lot of them were injured. See, Russian forces are still a little far away. I mean, the nearest advance which they have made towards Kiev, they are still about 12 to 13 kilometers away. But now the whole Kiev city is within the artillery range of the medium artillery and the multi-barrel rocket launchers which Russian forces have. The entire city is within their range now. They can fire at will anywhere on any building in Kiev city. It is like about 10 kilometers away from the city center, but it is quite close to Irpin where the fighting was taking place, and maybe just about 10 kilometers from the front lines and 10 kilometers from the center. You can take it that way. And this is Akademia district. It's difficult for me to pronounce it right now, but it's Akademia district, which is named the place where it is. And it's a fully residential area, only residential buildings in this whole area, no military establishment, no establishment of any strategic importance or any communication center. And this bomb has hit a totally, completely residential sector inside the Kiev city today morning around 4:30 to 5 local time.
What time it happened? What time did the explosion took place? 4, 5 in the morning? Okay, but you okay? ये अंग्रेजी नहीं बोल पा रहे हैं, नहीं समझ पा रहे हैं, लेकिन इनका घर तबाह हुआ। ये बिल्डिंग में उस वक्त थे, मैंने इनसे बात की है। इन्होंने बताया कि बिल्डिंग के अंदर थे जब धमाका हुआ इतना बड़ा और ये भाग के निकले, लेकिन ये सुरक्षित है। लेकिन बिल्डिंग अभी भी जल रही है, अभी भी आग की लपटें देखी जा सकती है। और ये और फायर हुए हैं, 2 और बम धमाके अभी हुए हैं, शायद कीव शहर के अंदर ही हुए हैं, काफी पास में हैं जो इस वक्त हुए हैं।
Our Foreign Affairs editor Geeta Mohan is getting us all those details. She joins us from ground zero. Geeta is at this point in time in Lviv. Geeta, this is the same place where Russia has claimed to have killed 180 mercenaries in this particular region. Give us an idea about what is the situation right now as far as Russia's progression here is concerned.
Well, it is serious because it is not just confined to Kiev. When everybody thought Lviv was safe, Sneha, we are right now in Lviv, and you can see people. There has been an air raid alert here.
Okay, we'll just try and reconnect with Geeta. Once again, apologize for that poor line, but going across to Rajesh Pawar, who is getting us all those details from Kiev right now, the capital city of Ukraine, where Russia is, Rajesh, relentless essentially, not sparing civilians, not sparing residential buildings. Give us an idea about how their progression essentially has been like in this particular city.
Look, as I've been reporting, except for last 2 days, before that it was quite calm here in Kiev. Not too much of blast or missiles. We could not hear anything. It looked like a normal. But you can see right now, could you hear? Big blast again. So this has become a normal affair now in Kiev city. NCC firing, outskirts, you can hear blast one after the other. And it has become very, very normal for last 2 days. And we have covered now 2 residential buildings which were hit yesterday. It was in Oblon. Today it was in this Akademikov district. So these areas have been hit, residential buildings have been hit, and now the sound of blasts has become quite normal. It's like normal affair. The way till few days it was air sirens. Now air sirens don't even matter. They become used to it, and now it looks like people have to start getting used to the sound of these blasts, which can be heard at regular interval now in Kiev city. Over to you.
What a terrible situation. Rajesh is telling us that the people there are getting used to just being distressed. You know, Geeta, this is upsetting at so many levels. You were in fact telling us about the ground situation in Lviv. I want you to continue, Geeta.
Well, that's right. We had a bit of a technical issue, but Sneha, I am in Lviv, and like Kiev, there have been incidents around outside of Lviv for sure, but there was an air raid alert, and people over here have been asked to move to the bomb shelters. Now, all buildings do not have bomb shelters and bunkers, and that's the reason why those who do not, if you see right behind me, people now moving into the city center where the bomb shelters have been made, the temporary shelters. So a lot of them walking into the shelters, and every time there is an air raid alert, which is a rarity for Lviv, and that's the reason why people take it very seriously. So you will see across from where I stand, you'll see a lot of people who are walking in only to make sure that they move to safety. An air raid alert, not once, thrice over across Lviv is certainly a concern and a worry. Why, Sneha? Is because Lviv is the supply line to most of the centers primarily Kiev as well, when it comes to food and other facilities. So if there is a situation where Russia attacks these roads and infrastructure in Lviv, Kiev could very well face massive shortages. So that's the reason why this is a huge scare, and hoping only that the Russians do not cut off supply lines for the rest of Ukraine. If Putin says what he does, if the Putin administration say that they're not looking at harming civilians and civilians are not the targets, any destruction of supply lines would mean direct impact on the civilians of Ukraine living across various cities in the country.
Yes, absolutely. Be with us, Geeta. I'm just going to get in a word from Rajesh also. Rajesh, in the last few days, we've seen words of solidarity. The European Union has spoken about this, and in solidarity with Ukrainians, the leaders of Poland, the Czech Republic and Slovenia are traveling to Kiev. But Russia has been relentless, isn't it? And absolutely unperturbed by what the European Union has to say or about the kind of sanctions that has been imposed on the Russian Federation.
Look, right now, Ukraine does not need words and visits by these people. Ukraine needs weapons, Ukraine needs aircraft, Ukraine needs aid. The mere words are not enough, and this is what they are not getting. They are not getting the weapons, they are not getting the ammunition, the aircraft, which they actually need. They need the world to enforce a no-fly zone over Ukraine. This is what they're not doing. So these just words coming from them have no meaning. Ukraine does not need words right now. Ukraine needs help in terms of no-fly zone or aircraft or weapons. Over to you.
Be with us. Geeta, also I want to ask you, just give us an idea about the kind of evacuation work that has been done in Lviv. Has everybody moved out of their homes, given that Russia is not sparing residential areas and civilians are being hit as well?
Well, in terms of evacuations, Neha, a very important question, because like I said, if Lviv is the center for supply, it is also the center for people to leave, to evacuate. So while other cities from the eastern parts of Ukraine, including central parts of Ukraine, are evacuating, they're evacuating to this very city, because after reaching Lviv, they then choose their borders, whether they want to go through the border in the Ukraine-Hungary border, or for that matter, the Ukraine-Poland border. So a lot of people who come to Lviv are looking at crossing over into Poland. And while they decide on how to, when to, and look at logistics, this is where they stay. While you're seeing a lot of people on the streets today, is because they're all moving to a bomb shelter. But normally, when we were here last time, while we were going to Kiev, the city wore quite a dead look, quite an abandoned look. Not because there weren't people, because they were all in various homes. So all the homes over here are housing people more than capacity. Why? Because all their family members, friends from various parts of Ukraine have descended upon the city and are living with family members in Lviv. Not everybody can afford hotels, and not many hotels are available. All the hotels are absolutely booked. So they're living with family members and friends, and many of them have volunteered to take people in. Even if they do not have friends and family, they've volunteered to take people in. So all the homes are also brimming to full capacity. And once they find their logistics in place, they then start moving to the border. So this is certainly not a city evacuated. This, in fact, is a city that is housing a lot of people who might not be visible, but a lot of people who are now planning on leaving Ukraine, even if it is temporarily.
What a situation there. Rajesh, you keep talking about how diplomacy essentially is going side by side with what really is happening in Ukraine, essentially. For our viewers, do get us up to speed with the fourth round of talks that have already taken place. And the irony of it is that even as the talks were being carried out, the shelling essentially continued, isn't it?
Look, diplomacy and war, they go side by side. If talks are going on, that doesn't mean the military offensive or the military operations will stop, and the other way around as well. If the military offensive is going on, that doesn't mean diplomacy will not go on. Both things are going side by side, and it's not just fourth round now. It is everyday conference now. Both the countries have agreed, Russia and Ukraine, both have agreed to carry out these conferences every day. There'll be now meetings, virtual meetings every day. This is what they've agreed to till the time they finally meet face to face somewhere else. So, and there are indications from both sides that talks are making progress. So as I said, talks are on one side, diplomacy is on one side, and war is on the other side. Russians have the momentum of war right now. They will not let this momentum of war break, because that will affect their operations. So diplomacy will continue, and so will war, till the time we have some kind of a resolution of this problem, till the time we have a middle path to which both these countries agree. Over to you.
All right, Geeta, also apart from Lviv, do give us an idea about the current situation in the entire country vis-a-vis the Russian occupation of various cities, essentially.
Strategically, absolutely agree with Rajesh on this one, that Russia does have a momentum when it comes to the places that they've occupied. Like we have been saying, Sneha, Russia chose its battleground to be well within Ukraine. It is not the border. It is not a Russia-Ukraine war being fought at the border. The Russia-Ukraine war is being fought on Ukrainian soil. And that makes a huge difference, because every advancement of the Russian forces is disadvantage Ukraine. Every time they stop somewhere and are not pushed back, it is advantage Russia and disadvantage Ukraine. So Russia does have an upper hand when it comes to how this war is playing out. And while diplomacy is underway, negotiations are underway, there has been no real outcome. Yesterday was the only time, the fourth round of chief negotiator level talks, where they said that they are looking at some technicalities, and so that negotiation level is going to continue. So we do not know when and how, but it certainly means that if there are technicalities that both sides are discussing, and Russian side says that they're adamant on a few issues, neutrality of Ukraine, a recognition of Crimea, recognition of Donetsk and Luhansk, then that certainly could cause problems for President Zelensky. But an unrelenting Ukrainian force over here trying to do as much as they can. This, even as gun battles are on in various parts. We saw foreign journalists shot to death.
Yes.
There are snipers. There are Russian forces, Russians who are taking shots at civilians. In some time, you will see the conventional war is not so conventional. The methods have been unconventional, be it Russia announcing exactly where they're going to hit before hitting, and the reason why evacuations have taken place in those cities, or for that matter, using mercenaries who might not always follow orders. So it could get rather messy, and it already has when it comes to ongoing battles that we are seeing in various parts. While the Ukrainian forces, for now, despite the surrounding of Kiev, the capital city of Kiev, they're already in the Kiev region. Despite surrounding of the capital city, they have been able to hold them at bay. Does not really mean that that can continue for long. The bigger question over here, Sneha, is also what has the West really done? For fear of escalation to a full-blown war between NATO and Russia, they are not intervening. But not intervening means that Ukraine does not have the resources to really withstand the Russian might. And we've not seen the full force of the Russian army or the Russian air force. So it is only a matter of days while negotiations are on. Will Russia be patient enough when the European Union is expediting the process of membership of Ukraine into the EU? Will they be patient enough to really allow that to happen? And if they're not going to be patient, if Putin runs out of patience, then what is going to happen? Will we only hear Biden say that, well, we are sending more food and humanitarian aid to Ukraine, and is that enough?
Absolutely. Geeta, be with us. We'll come back to you and to Rajesh for more on that story in a bit from now. We're playing out a report that Rajesh had sent us earlier today where he was in fact in conversation with a couple of residents there in Kiev.
I'm here with Lena, who lives near this house. Let's know what she feels about it. Lena, kуда тебе дома? And how far it is? Сколько distance? Tam? Her house is just about from here, about 150 meters from here. Что ты думаешь about this?
Но были слышны очень сильно